Welcome to the Woman Worriers podcast, where we're working to help you call a truce with your anxiety. The information in this podcast is not a substitute for seeking help from a licensed mental health professional. Now, here's your host, Elizabeth Cush, LCPC.
Welcome back to the Woman Worriers podcast. I'm your host, Elizabeth Cush, and today we're going to be talking to Danielle Ivins-Fishman. But before we get started, I just want to shout out to all of you, saying thank you to listening, subscribing, following, and rating the podcast. You can leave a review on iTunes or Apple Podcasts. That would be much appreciated, an honest review, as well as rating the podcast there. You can also subscribe, and you can follow us on social media at Woman Worriers on Instagram and Twitter. We're also on Facebook at Woman Worriers, so you can follow us there too. So my guest today, Danielle Ivins-Fishman, is a certified TRE provider. And TRE stands for Trauma Release Exercises. She's also an integrative and trauma-informed coach, an emotional and social educator, and a safe and sound protocol provider. As a teacher, role model, and pioneer in her field, Danielle has one life goal, and that's to support others in truly knowing themselves, forgiving themselves, and connecting to a meaningful and thriving life. She utilizes TRE, coaching, and education as her guiding vehicles for those looking to find deep meaning and healing on all levels through mind-body integration, which automatically reconnects them to the life of their dreams and healthy relationships that allow them to soar. So I wanted to add a little clarification. Danielle and I talk about somatic work in this episode, and I really didn't stop and ask her to define what that means. But somatic therapy is a form of body-centered therapy that looks at the connection of the mind and body and uses both psychotherapy and physical therapies for holistic healing. So I'm super excited. Danielle and I are going to be talking about TRE and why it's so important to bring the body into any kind of healing. So let's get started with the conversation. Hi, Danielle. Welcome to the Woman Worriers podcast.
Thank you so much. So happy to be here.
I know. I'm so happy to have you here. I don't even know when it was that we first started this conversation about getting you on the podcast, but it's been a couple of months for sure.
Yes.
And I'm just excited that it's going to happen and that we're going to be able to do this.
Yes, I am too. Very, very excited.
Yeah. So if you wouldn't mind telling the audience a little bit about you, the work you do, and what has inspired this journey?
Yes, well, I'll be a little formal at first, but I'm a certified TRE provider. That stands for Trauma Releasing Exercises, which we'll go into soon.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also an integrative and trauma-informed coach, and I also work part-time in schools and middle schools and high schools doing social and emotional education. And this year, we've really come into the high schools doing a life skills program called Thrive. So we are very excited to be there. So that's what I'm doing. And, I guess what I really love about where my professional life has led is that not only am I in schools doing this education work with girls and now co-eds in high school, but I'm just really passionate about really bringing a new awareness to healing. So, and my own journey of healing kind of has taken me to a space where I didn't expect to be here, but I'm really focusing on, with my own clients, teaching a more somatic modality, which is really getting to know their nervous systems, this innate, very primal part of us that holds a lot of the keys to our healing and our mind-body integration, I guess you could say.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's been, life has kind of guided me here unexpectedly. I thought I was going to be finishing my master's and through my own journey of healing, I realized, well, this is kind of a space that's a little more untouched. So I work in conjunction with counselors at a wellness center, and we are just devoted to getting clients to really just step into full healing on all levels.
So important. And I feel like this part of, this bringing in the body, bringing in the, your neurological, all your brain stuff to the healing is so important. And just, I feel like we're just sort of entering, although it's broadened, like it's becoming more mainstream, but I feel like it's still pretty new.
Yeah, I actually can't believe, I'm so grateful that it's really kind of busting through as something that is being, metabolized in the healing fields. But if I would have only known this in my early journeys with my own healing, and that's why I'm so passionate about it, because it's really, it's not simple, but it's kind of like the key in a lot of ways to really kind of unlock either whether it's trauma or stress. I kind of like to look at it in both ways.
Yep.
But, we can be in therapy for years and years, and it's helpful, and we feel the advances, and we feel our life getting better, feel more integrated. But for those of us, and also just clients and people that I work with, it's like the body still hasn't caught up.
Right.
So that's what I'm passionate about doing, is teaching people to really become embodied by understanding their nervous system and how that affects every part of them, including their neurology. Yep.
Yeah. Well, and especially with trauma, to be able to release that trauma from your body. And I don't know that not necessarily everybody sort of understands that, that it gets, even if you're not consciously aware of it, we store this, potentially traumatic experience in our bodies that without healing that, or releasing that, it's so hard to fully move forward.
Yeah, and it's like a mystery. We, things happen to us before our brain kind of comes fully online, and some of this stress or trauma gets kind of locked into our body and our stress patterns in our body. And again, this isn't something that we can talk our way out of fully. And so it, in conjunction with any kind of really great therapist or therapeutic modality, this just kind of really supports that growth and that release. And it's almost like we're stepping into the mystery of our body, but it's a really innocent and very primal and very sweet part of us. So it's kind of, we'll go into that more, but that's how I kind of like to look at it. It's not scary. It's kind of like, people do inner child work. And this is kind of just really loving the true nature of those parts of ourselves.
Oh, yeah. Yes. So important.
Yes.
But so hard too sometimes.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. And that's, because I am in the process myself, and I will be for my entire life, because that's part of
me too.
This. Yeah. This is why I'm doing it and I'm teaching it, and doing my best to really just make it as digestible as possible, as safe as possible. And so, it's in conjunction with the work I do with TRE and educating people on their nervous systems. It's really just, it's the science of safety, or it's really understanding and really getting into that space where we're making friends with our nervous system and starting to look at our environment and our relationships, and figuring out how to really make ourselves feel safe so that we can get into that thriving healing place. And whatever we're dealing with, whether it's depression or anxiety, anything on that spectrum, any dis-ease in our body, this is one modality that helps.
So this one modality. So the trauma release exercises. So I have not experienced this. I have not done it myself. I've, watched some videos. I have, actually our connection is my sister-in-law.
I know.
who also helps me. She does all the show notes and edits blogs for me. But she was saying, that she had been, I think, to one of your classes, and she's like, you should check them out. So anyway, thank you. Thank you, Kathy, for that.
Thank you, Kathy. Yes.
But so tell us about the trauma release exercises. Like, what are they? Where did they come from? What's the purpose? All of it.
Okay, great question. So what I'll first say is I like to say it this way. So it's stress, tension, and trauma releasing exercises. So stress and tension and trauma, they're on the same spectrum in our bodies.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I like to look at it. And they're actually just a really simple set of exercises and stretches. And what we're doing with preparing the body is we're basically preparing the body to release some of these very deep, automatic, muscular patterns of stress and trauma. So the amazing man who has kind of spent his whole lifetime bringing all of this together, and by the way, in the very early stages, he's also colleagues with Peter Levine. So, Peter Levine has stepped in and they have kind of tweaked over several decades where TRE has gotten today. So basically what we're doing is we're taking the person into this natural reflex mechanism that's kind of in your body. And some people, people that are more familiar with physiology, the psoas muscle, this is kind of central to the process. And what we're doing is we're taking people back into that part of themselves, and we're actually slowly starting to reactivate it. And it's all connected into the nervous system. And when we slowly do that, what starts happening is pretty amazing. And I sent you some resources and videos. It's really cool to watch it.
Yeah.
Is that you start to experience, whether it's humming, vibrating, shaking, it's this mechanism that begins to kind of reopen. And when this is done, in a class or when I work with people individually, it's, we make it extremely safe, and we just kind of cushion everybody in these nests of props. And this is giving the body a chance to basically return back to that state of balance and harmony through, your body is taking over at this point. And it's going into whatever pathways it needs to, releasing the muscles, your cortisol is coming down. All of your chemicals are starting to kind of come back to slowly, your own version of homeostasis. What's really cool, and what I really love about this is that, here's, I'm sure we all remember, or if we have dogs, sometimes I'll say, okay, remember your children or your dogs, but we had this mechanism completely active for most of our young lives. Like when we got scared or we got really excited, we would, our teeth would chatter, or we'd get kind of like, we'd start to shake a little bit, or, that was something that was just absolutely natural and normal. And that was that mechanism absolutely taking care of us. But we grow up and, we start to realize, well, if we're going to kind of shake, we might not want to be seen that way. Or, I don't know about you, but I still sometimes find my leg, if I'm having one of those days, my leg starts to bounce.
Oh, yeah.
But, what we do is we become civilized and we start to shut it down as adults. So Dr. Berselli, he kind of pieced all this together when he was working in these war-torn areas like the Sudan, Kenya, Egypt. And he started working with people to help them release their trauma in these war-torn areas. And he would notice the difference. He would be in bomb shelters and he'd watch, they'd all be huddled. The adults are holding on to the children. The children are just naturally kind of shaking in the adults' arms and releasing and crying, which we know is completely natural and healthy and normal. Yeah. And what he noticed, no matter what country he was in, the adults kind of went into this like stiff, rigid pattern. And that's just what we kind of do in this modern world. We start to shut down these mechanisms. So long story short, we're just kind of taking people back into these natural systems that will, we teach it. We usually say, okay, come to class at least 6 to 8 times. Let us lead you into it. But what I love about this is that they get to take it home, and they get to kind of use this as they put it in their toolbox.
Right.
And it's something that I know that I've needed, on my road to healing. It's like, okay, I see my therapist or I go to groups, and then I can go home and I can actually have a space where I can really learn how to care for myself and de-stress, whether it's a crazy day or, some crazy event that happens.
Yeah.
Just knowing how to take care of yourself in this way or any other modality it's a gift.
And so with the exercises, one, I had one question, like the psoas, like where on your body is that?
So the psoas, if you can kind of envisioning this like skeletal middle region of the body, the psoas connects. It's kind of like it splays out. It connects kind of the lower mid part of the spine, and it splays out kind of over the hips, and it connects into the deep hip muscles.
Okay.
So it's kind of like this splayed muscle and what it does is it kind of allows us, so fight or flight response, if we ever get scared or, you'll see people kind of like hunch forward, we're protecting the middle parts of our body. The psoas is one of the big muscles that help us when we're in fight flight to kind of bring ourselves forward and protect.
Okay.
And even if we're, say there's an event, there's a loud noise, or even if we're sitting at a desk all day and we're stressed and we have deadlines, we all notice we kind of start hunching forward.
Totally.
So this is the muscle that starts getting so rigid and so stressed. And so that's the psoas.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting. As listeners know, I am a trauma survivor, but I carry pain in my lower, like left back, like sort of above the hip, but right there at the base of the spine. And, I've been working on that myself through movement, through therapy, through all of that. But I do notice that when I'm stressed, like that, particularly that side of my body gets just tightens, like it just contracts.
Yes.
And then I can like move in a way that I'm like, whereas if I'm relaxed, then I'm like, okay, I can support it in a healthier way, and it doesn't hurt. But so with these exercises, what is the goal? Like, so we are sort of bringing our, neurological balance back online. Like, is that? Okay.
Well, that's one of the major perks of this. So I would say the process, it's funny because what led me here was because, surprise, surprise, this little psoas muscle, big psoas muscle. I had this going through a huge life transition, leaving a relationship of 19 years.
Wow.
And my hips, I'm an active person at that point. I'm using the gym for a stress relief. I'm in the gym 5 times a week. It's part of how I manage life and having 2 kids and a business and going back to school. And now I'm stepping into a new life, being, single. And
yes.
And all of a sudden my hip, it just, it was an undiagnosed hip issue to the point where I didn't have movement there. I started having nerve problems. No one could tell me what was going on. So through this search of how do I relieve myself of this pain, I stepped into understanding different somatic therapies. And that is, so there's many things, going back to what you're saying, there's many things that begin to happen when we start stepping into a modality like this. And there's several others like this, but we'll focus on this one because this is the one I know best.
Okay.
We start to, again, what happens is this is all simultaneous. We're in this mechanism. We begin to do it more regularly. And there's a process to really getting your body to really get reacquainted. And I use the metaphor of like, imagine you just dropped specifically a bottle of soda or seltzer. You just dropped it. And then you're going to pick it up. And so I always tell this to people in class, just imagine that that's really what we're doing here. We want to do this slow. So because if I'm going to open that cap, I'm not going to open it quick. And this is basically the metaphor for the nervous system. We're going to slowly go and then kind of close the cap and close the cap because the body is going to have to reacquaint to this process.
Okay.
So in that process, your neurology starts to shift, your chemicals start to shift, your hormones specifically for women, and that's something that I'm mostly about because I'm a woman.
Yep.
But even with men, it's just your hormones start to shift. So your body in this process has this innate wisdom to do it, and we do this slowly, to really this with a huge respect for this body-mind integration process, and especially if you've had trauma.
Yep.
That we begin to see these things happen. Sleep improves, mental clarity improves. It's more energy. You feel the endurance improve for people that have, reduced muscle tension. I think we all can say, oh, this is just an area that's always tight. We start to feel a little more movement.
Yeah.
Our emotional resiliency kind of starts to be affected. And if we're in therapy, if we're doing work in therapy, we start to really realize maybe I'm able to tolerate some of these titrations into some of these areas that I want to work on. Maybe it gives me just a little bit more courage, a little bit more space, our window of tolerance increases. With our kids, more patience. I mean, really, it's it can be even it's spiritual too. So I'd say all levels of self begins to start to experience the changes, and it's just a deep, innocent process of embodying.
Yeah.
And I absolutely adore it, and I take it very seriously, and I do it very slow, just because I just respect the process, and it feels great. I mean, we'll have people fall asleep, and I've seen people come back in and say, "Oh my goodness, I'm dreaming vividly. I haven't dreamed like this." So our unconscious mind begins to start to shift and change. So
wow.
Yeah, it's a personal process for each person, but I love hearing where everyone begins to go.
Yeah, I would imagine that's pretty amazing to see the transformation and transitions. And I know I'm a part of a group for healers. It's called Intuitive Movement. So, so basically you go and move for 90 minutes. I mean, we reflect and talk about it too, and you're doing it with your eyes closed with other people in the room. And so, it's a very therapeutic, amazing thing, but same thing. So we're really tuning into our bodies and what they want to do, how they want to move. Yes. And so it has shifted my own therapy in ways I just never expected. Just because, just being in your body that intentionally opens up a lot.
Oh, it does. And that is beautiful. And I actually would say that what you just expressed and what you experience in that group, it's very similar, because what we're doing is we're kind of we're just in tune with our body. It's present moment into attunement. Mm-hmm. And, you start to build this trust. And for anybody that's experienced trauma, there's just a direct cutoff.
Oh, yeah.
With our body. And sometimes it's different parts. Sometimes it's the whole body. And it's a gradual step into building that self-trust. That's how it's been for me. And when I would love to find one of those intuitive movement groups. I'm going to go check out, because that would be amazing.
It's pretty great. I mean, it's very vulnerable, but it's super great. I mean, it's
I like that you can close your eyes.
Oh, yes. Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's also this whole witnessing part where you're watching other movers, which also is amazing. And,
oh, wow.
Yeah, it's very cool. I'm fortunate enough to have a therapist nearby who does that work with us. So
wonderful.
So, I mean, we've sort of touched on the importance of getting into your body, doing that work, whether it's tension or stress or trauma or all of that. And I know, you and I here have both said, okay, we're doing body work, but also bringing the therapy piece into it. Why is that? How does that even sort of help the work move forward? Yeah. Faster or better? I don't know what the right word is.
Here's the thing. My first thought when you said that is that I probably would gauge where the person is at in therapy. I mean, again, it's a process, and I think anything like this can be done in conjunction. Mm-hmm. I think it's an amazing way to kind of allow release. And so for some people in therapy, I would say this is a great modality, whether it's TRE or, like you said, an intuitive movement group, because you're embodying, you're creating this somatic, kind of more unconscious trust with the body as you're going into the mental space and you're doing more work connecting the past and doing the more mental, psychological, emotional work. And it's just a beautiful way to kind of weave in this whole experience of healing. And I mean, I've definitely had people that come in that I say, okay, so I would say, I mean, this is just, I'm giving an example. I had a person that came into the group and I'd say, a group atmosphere might not be something that your body's ready for, maybe something one-on-one, because it's a very vulnerable experience, like you said about your movement group.
Yes.
And so I would say, okay, would you like to work with me and then kind of create a more safe environment? And sometimes I'll say, we have some great EMDR therapists and other types of, therapy modalities, and I'll say, just do a little more release work here to get more associated. So it's really just checking in with yourself and saying, okay, where am I in my healing journey? Of course, finding a great TRE provider that you immediately walk into and see. Our body doesn't, there's great books like this, but our body doesn't lie. And part of the work I do with people is we have this part of our memory. It's this implicit part that tells us right away if we feel safe or not.
Yeah.
So number one, getting acquainted with, if I find a provider for a modality and do I feel good, and listening. And if you feel great, stepping into that, starting to embody, doing this mindfulness work. And that's where I keep the process. I keep it kind of in this guided mindfulness. We go in, we call it this interoceptive. Dr. Dan Siegel talks a lot about interoception and really getting into our body and starting to pay attention to these little feelings and sensations. And I guide people to stay in the physical sensation. And if emotions come up, we just offer them acceptance, guiding back into sensation. So that's why I think it's a really cool thing to do in conjunction, because we're somatically and physically being mindful while you're with a therapist. You're kind of entering into those other realms, and it seems to work beautifully.
Yeah, I would imagine that it does. And I love that you talk about just taking it slowly, really, I think especially for trauma survivors, the work needs to go slowly because, we have to titrate. We got to figure out how to manage it as we're going along. And, just busting the top off that soda can is gonna not feel so great. It's not gonna feel so great.
Don't. And it's funny because how many people, including me, have run into a therapist's office or a modality, have done a workshop. I'm in pain. I'll do what it takes. Let's go.
Right. Fix me.
Fix me. And then I jump into it because I tend to do that with a lot of things, which I really like about myself. But when it comes to trauma healing, no. No, you know what? Because I do that. I open a lot, and then I end up taking a week or two or three, and I pay for it. So I really, as a practitioner in everything that I do, I hold a container around that gentle process because I think that's just a very compassionate and loving thing, and I'm practicing that on myself. And
Yep. Well, the work I think goes hand in hand. I think the best healers are those that are healing too.
Yes, agreed. I'm so happy. I mean, that's a criteria for me when I step into any healing, when I'm the client of a healing modality.
Yeah. Well, you want to feel that you're understood and that they get it.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Yeah. And so, just to, whether it's your own experience or, what you've seen clients experience, what, someone who knows nothing about TRE, what sort of outcome might they expect from the process?
Well, the first thing I come to mind with, I'm just going to kind of just in my mind viewing several clients that have been on the process over a year or two with me. What I've seen is not only a reconnection with their body. I mean, I'm speaking on this. I'm speaking physically, more along the lines of I know what I need to do to care for myself. Oh my goodness! I realize now that with understanding what my body needs for safety, it's almost like they start to step into this deep, deep self-care where they might have completely just let life and busyness and being moms, if you have several children or any human being, we kind of just bypass the importance for caring for ourselves on these bodily levels. And so I see people just starting to come in and say, you know what I did for myself this week? Or do you know the dreams I'm having? And now I'm starting to, create dream journals, or I started realizing that at night I want to create more safety for my body. And I've been taking salt baths and, so sometimes it's simple. It's just a deep conscious care for the body. And then in other cases, it's, I've seen, specifically a woman that I've worked with who had lost her son in a tragedy. She would come in and it would be her space to just grieve. I mean, and I knew it, and she and I would talk, so when I hold a group, I lead them in through the exercises, and then they all just get comfy with all their props and pillows and blankies and, and it's just like they're nested. And I just knew in the corner that she just allowed that space once a week to grieve and to tear and to shake and to let her body just continue to release the layers of grief from the loss of her son. And it was her space. It was her sacred space. And she would share things. And then, and she would ask, what could I maybe do to help integrate this during the week? And, it was just that's the touching case that I bring to mind. It reconnected her with her ability to, get closer with her children that were still alive. And so it really just started to improve her relationships. In a way that you say, okay, I'm going and tremoring my body, yet I'm able to see my grandchildren more. I have more energy. I'm not as sad. I planted flowers, and like I just watched the process of her grieving and opening back up to life.
Wow.
So that was she's a very touching case. She's the first person I speak about, and. I've seen people who are still dealing with injuries from car accidents or from surgeries or, mild diseases, just kind of say, I'm starting to feel sensation in my legs again. And I'm feeling like, my overall digestion is changing. And there's just lots of different spaces it can go. It's all organic to the being, who walks in and is brave enough to say, I'm going to get in touch with myself in this way.
Yeah. Well,
it's brave.
It is so brave and can be, life-changing, shifting, all that. And I just going back to your comments about self-care, I think sometimes, the very basic, like caring for our bodies, as you said, we've learned how to be so disconnected that sometimes we don't even recognize, that we're thirsty or we need to go to the bathroom or whatever it might be, or we don't trust that we know what our body needs.
Oh my goodness. And, and this is the culture we live in. And not that I want to say I think everyone is traumatized, because there's different levels in the spectrum, but we live in a really difficult society that is very individualistic and pushes us, to limits and disconnects us from our body. Just living in our culture, we're kind of pressured to disconnect.
Oh,
to
for
tough
sure.
it out so I mean, I'm 41 years old, and I'm a testament to someone who pushed. And through my own issues with my own health and reconnecting with my body in this way, I can't bypass what my body is telling me anymore. It's kind of, this is what's interesting. It's sort of, part of me struggles with that. It's like, darn it, I can't push like I used to. I don't have the endurance that I used to. I'm not as multitasking. But guess
so
what?
funny.
My body stops me and says no. And my body's like, slow down. And it's the communication that I'm building.
Yeah.
I can't lie to myself anymore and push myself beyond certain physical boundaries. Then it goes into the emotional boundaries. It really calls me out in such an amazing way.
Well, and the key is like, you've learned how to listen to it, right?
Yes. Yeah. And that is, it's such a blessing. And I giggle about the part where, because I would want this no other way. But some days I'm like, man, all the things I used to be able to get done.
Right. Sort of miss that.
Yeah, dissociated or like convincing myself I was invincible. And, our bodies will catch up with us. Thank God.
Yes.
They're the smartest parts of us. And, especially this innate part, which I'm just going to say, I focus more on that psoas muscle, which is kind of the link to our aliveness in a lot of ways, because it's just a great muscle to get in tune with.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So, if someone was looking for like TRE practitioners,
Yes.
are there resources, or if they just wanted to kind of know more about it, like what are some resources or tips that might be helpful? And I will include all the stuff that you emailed me today in the show notes on my website, so they'll all be there. But what are some tips? Yeah.
Yeah, what I would say first is to go onto the worldwide website. It's and you've given it. It's traumaprevention.com. There is a link where you can go and you can seek out someone that's local to you. And again, most of the major countries in the world, there are providers. So that would be the first step if you wanted to see someone in person, see if there's any groups available. If you're local to Pennsylvania, local to the Northeast, there's some links there. We have classes. Right now we have a Wednesday night class. I do individual sessions. I also have individual sessions that I do via Zoom.
Oh, wow.
So, that's something that I've been doing. I was hesitant. Actually, I've only been doing this for the past year and a half because I thought I really liked the body in front of me.
I'm sure. But yeah.
But I had a few people that I would speak to and they're like, I just want to, and I thought, okay, let's do this. And so I've definitely gotten comfortable and it's a wonderful process. It's a very individual process. And I have them set up a space and we kind of make sure we create that safety space, that space for us to kind of work in together, even though it's virtual. So going on and finding a provider close by, you could always contact me and we could do a virtual experience together. And
cool.
And there are videos that I've sent as well. What I do recommend, and this is what we were trained to recommend, is that it's really important. So you'll see videos where they'll actually show you how to do it, which is totally up to the person. They can do that. But I really suggest in the very beginning, because the body is getting into these spaces, to really do it with a provider, a certified provider.
Yeah.
And, people have come in and said, oh, I did it all myself and, it was fine. But sometimes it will open up based on what we understand about where we hold our trauma. Sometimes it's in these deep implicit places that are nonverbal. Yeah. And we're just being cautious and leading, people into their animals. Sometimes we'll call it very gently and with compassion. And we live in that go-go world. It's like, I could do it myself. And yes, that's true.
But to have that support of a certified provider to be there and help, whether it's explain or support or whatever.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And our nervous systems. And again, a really great link that I always recommend people watching. I could have gotten into this, but Seth Porges, who is the son of Dr. Stephen Porges, who is the amazing genius who's brought the polyvagal theory, is one of the most life-changing scientific theories right now, leading us to this space of true somatic healing through safety. So he explains, I really recommend everyone watching that. He explains how we really need to step into this understanding of what our body needs to feel safe. And so when people are practicing this by themselves, our nervous systems immediately understand if we're not with another. We're bonded animals, and our nervous systems, they need to feel the safety of another person. So that's what I always like to say. Like, our body feels safe around people.
Yeah. And having that space with another is so connecting too. It really is nourishing for us.
Yes. Oh, so much so. So yes. And of course, if people are very interested, there are workshops, and you don't have to get certified. So those are being offered all over. I got my certifications in Colorado and also North Carolina. But there are just workshops that you can go to, and you do these amazing educational, classes, and then you all shake together. And it's a beautiful process where you become limbically resonated, meaning we start to connect. And it's just, for those interested in that, there are workshops that are held all over the world.
So cool.
Yes.
Wow. Well, Danielle, how do people find you personally?
Oh, so personally, thank you.
Yes.
You know what? So again, I've listed my website. So my website is holisticfitnesslifestyle.com. And also, if you're on Facebook, you can look up Thrive Now with Holistic Fitness Lifestyle. And locally, if you happen to be local to Bucks County, Pennsylvania, I work in a wellness and counseling center, an amazing center, which we teach classes in, and also I work in. Mm-hmm. It's called AIRMID Wellness, AIRMID wellness.com. So, and then that shows where our classes are, and we do workshops, and so
cool.
All of those places you can find me.
Very cool. Well,
yes.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad that this worked out, that we were able to find a time and talk. And I just really appreciate your being on the podcast.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. It really was.
Wow, that was a really great conversation. Danielle is so easy to connect with, and I felt as if she and I were of the same mind in terms of healing and bringing the body into healing and how important that is. For me, it's so great to talk to providers out there who are doing this work on a very conscious, caring, compassionate level, because trauma work is hard. Trauma work takes patience and time and compassion and space. And I just so appreciate it when other healers are of the same mind and have an awareness of how important the process has to be in order for people to truly heal and not re-traumatize themselves. So I hope you'll check out her resources if you're in the Bucks County, Pennsylvania area. She is there, so check her out. If not, there will be a link so that you can find providers in your area in the show notes. All of the resources we talked about, including Danielle's contact info, will also be in the show notes. So I hope you'll check them out at womanworriers.com. Going forward this week, I hope that all of you will take care of your bodies in kind, compassionate ways. Have a wonderful week. Ciao for now from this Woman Worrier.
Thanks for listening and subscribing to the Woman Worriers podcast. Music was written and performed by Andy Cush. If you'd like more information on this episode, you can find the show notes, the resources shared today, and links to the guests' profiles at womanworriers.com.